Morning, Dermot.
Good morning. We have a new YouTube channel that Hill is taking care of. What's the name of it? It's not Safer Camp anymore. What is it? Rabbi Eli Smith, EILR. So the videos are going up, but it's not the same channel. Okay. Let's see. Where did we leave off? Iboilahu on 22b. If this is 6-7 lines from the bottom. Iboilahu. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this chus of our learning, we should have the base of Migdash. And the learning for Shlema for my father, and for Naftali ben Menuch Bela. Okay, we've been discussing. Mishnah says that an animal can't be placed in the hands of a idolater because we're concerned of bestiality. Then we had a brisa that says you're allowed to buy animals for a korban from an idolater. Now, if there's a real concern of bestiality, then you shouldn't be allowed to buy animals from them for a korban because it becomes usher. So we give a few answers. Rav's answer was when it's their own animals, they won't do that. It's only when it's someone else's animals. Rav Kana said that there was a concern that it's why won't they do that if it's their own animals? Because it will make the animal sterile. Rav Kana said, he added in that it would also weaken the animal. Okay, and that had a difference if it's a male animal, a female animal. Rav Kana covered some other things for the basis. Well, now the Gemara says, Iboilu, where's the question? What's going to be the din by birds? Should you be concerned that bestiality would be performed with birds as well by the idolaters? Notice how far is our concern with the idolaters' behaviors? Well, Tashima, come and listen. Dam Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Shem Rab Chanina. Rav Yehuda says the name of Shmuel and the name of Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina was the Talmud of Rebbe. His name is Rav Chanina Bar Chama. They said in his name, Ani Reisyev Kechavim. I saw a non-Jewish Lakachavas Menashuk that bought a goose in the market. Rava Chankat Salavachla. He lived with it. He strangled it. He roasted it and he ate it. Okay, it seems like it's a concern. Rabbi Yirmiyah Difti said, I saw an Arab, he bought a thigh in the marketplace, I guess a thigh of meat. He made a hole in it so that he could, the amount that he could live with, that he could commit bestiality. And Ravat Salavachla, he did that act, then he roasted it and he ate it. Okay. Seems like this concern is more than just a male, female, or female animal, but it applies to birds as well. Even though Rabbi Yirmiyah wasn't talking about the yerech of a bird, right? It doesn't say. But we see from Rabbi Chanina that this is something that they could have done. Okay. Ravina Amar, we're going back to our contradiction that we had yesterday. We're on top of Chav Gimel. And the contradiction was that it says that you have to be concerned not to put your animals in the care of an idolater because he could commit bestiality. And on the other hand, we said that you're allowed to buy an animal from an idolater and use it as a sacrifice. Ravina says, what's going on over here? So it says like kasha. It's not a contradiction between the Mishnah and the Brisa because halachatchila hadiyavad. Lichatchila, you should be careful not to put your animals in their care. B'diavad, once it's in their care and you buy an animal, then you don't have to be concerned. There's a lichatchila and b'diavad. That's a b'diavad means after the fact. B'diyavad, after it's been done. The Gemara says, tema deshani bein lichatchila bein b'diavad. How do you know that when it comes to these concerns, that there's actually a difference between lechatchila and b'diavad? Lechatchila you have to be concerned, and b'diavad everything is good. Well, The Tanan, we have a Mishnah. It says, he said that a woman should not be secluded with an idolater because an idolater is suspected for arayas, that he's going to be have inappropriate behavior, promiscuous behavior with her. But we have a contradiction. That if a woman is captured or taken into captivity by idolaters, and the reason why is because there's a debt of some sort, and they owe money, they take her. So Mutaris Labaila, when she's returned, she's allowed to go back to be with her husband. Maybe this is Dr. Stein was mentioning this yesterday. Mutaris Labaila, she's permitted to her husband. However, if it was a matter of life and death, it means that if she was taken because they were going to kill her or something like that, and then she ends up getting returned, then Asur Labaila, then she's prohibited to her husband. But our point here is not from the nefashas. Our point is from the Mutaris Labaila. If it was for money, then she's permissible to her husband. Now, but basically what we saw was lichatchila, she should not be secluded with him. B'diavad, if she was, she's permissible to her husband.
They following the logic that like same with the animals. Like for example, like you won't hurt the woman that he's going to get money for.
Oh, so 1 second. 1 second. First, we have to establish that there's a difference between lechatchila and b'diavad. Lechatchila, you have to be concerned, and b'diavad, it's not a problem. Well, there's a little bit of a discussion here, because a woman would only be prohibited to her husband if her husband is a kohen. Only a woman that was raped, if her husband is a Yisrael, is permissible to her husband. So it's only if it's a kohen, the husband is a kohen, that is prohibited. However, maybe over here there's a concern that she lived with him willingly. Different ways of learning this Gemara. Okay. Yeah, if we say that it's a Yisrael, that this is the wife of Yisrael, then you're going to have to say that we're not concerned that she lived with him willingly. If it's a wife of a kohen, then we'll say we're not concerned that he lived with her at all. Okay. We see from this, we see clearly that there's a difference between lechatchila, where they can't be secluded, and b'diavad, after the fact, there's no problem. So we would say the same thing when it comes to the animal, that lechatchila, you can't put the animal in their care, and b'diavad, it's not a problem. You can use that animal for a carbon. Gemara says, "Mimai, how do you know that this is the case? Maybe really even b'diavad it's also." Why do you say over here it's mutter? Over here it's a special case. And at the time of the misyarim, we have a concern. He doesn't want to do anything to this woman that's going to affect his retrieval of the money that he feels that he's owed. So, yeah. So maybe the husband's going to say, okay, if I can't live with her anymore because you lived with her, maybe I'm not going to redeem her. I don't know. So therefore he's going to be more careful.
Yeah.
So we don't have a proof over here that b'diavad everything is good. This is a special case. Special case because in this case b'diavad it's good. In other cases maybe not. Maybe really b'diavad is the same as lechatchila, that you have to be strict. Teda, I'll prove it to you that this is the case to Klani Seva, because we actually have exactly this case in this brisa or this Mishnah. Is it a Mishnah or brisa? I'm not sure. That says the Klani Seifa that if the woman was taken because of a matter of life and death, in other words, maybe that they were going to kill her, and so then they return her, so then she is prohibited, which means even b'diavad she is prohibited. So you see, there's no difference between lechatchila and b'diavad. V'su lo imidi, and there's nothing more to add to this, which means that we're holding right now that we don't have a proof there's a difference between the Chatchila and B'diavad for Ravina's answer. Ravina gave this answer. We don't have a proof to support it. Okay. Rav Pedas Amar. Rav Pedas is usually is either the son or the father of Rav Elazar ben Pedas. And he's in Eretz Yisrael. Now, the problem with that is that we already had an answer from Rav and Rav Kahana. Rav Pedas would follow naturally. But Ravina, unless there's an earlier Ravina would be the later end of the sages. And then it would be totally out of order. But I believe there's an earlier Ravina. So it would put the answers that we have on our contradiction would be Rav and Rav Kahana, which are early sages, and Ravina. If Ravina fits in there, then great. And then Rav Pedas, which is also, around the time of Rabbi Yechanan, which fits perfectly. Rav Pedas Kasha Rav Elazar Rabbanan. He has his own way of answering the contradiction. He says it's a machlekes. It's the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. The opinion of Rabbanan. The Tanana was taught in the Mishnah. Gabi paras chatas, regarding a paras chatas, which means a para aduma, a red heifer. Rabbi Elazar Omer eina nikachas menayvit kechavim. Can't buy the red heifer from a non-Jew. All the stories, but getting the red heifer from this one and that one, and them finding the red heifer in Texas every once in a while on the news, they tell us this. They found one. It's a big hype. Well, Rabbi Eliezer holds. Rabbi Eliezer is the Tana. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, student of Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, going back to the temple times. He says, you're not allowed to buy it from a non-Jew, an idolater. The Chum say you are allowed. Well, my love, this is probably the machlekes. Rabbi Elazar is concerned that Rabbi Elazar says that we have to be concerned about bestiality. That what did the non-Jew do with this animal? That's going to invalidate it. And Rabbanan say that's not our concern. Well, we had a contradiction between our Mishnah and the Brisa. Also, they allowed to place an animal in their care. We said no. Were you allowed to purchase from them? We said yes. So what's the reason it's a contradiction? Well, Rabbi Elazar is the one that says no, that you're not allowed to put him in their care. Who's the one that says you're allowed to purchase? So it would be the Rabbanan. It's a good answer. Gemara says, Mimai, how do you know that this is the machlekes, Rabbi Elazar and the Rabbanan? Dilma, the Kol Yam Lechishin Levim. Maybe this is totally not the discussion. Maybe there's nothing to do with bestiality. That's a totally different story. This reason is like Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, if you put some sort of weight, some sort of load on it, it's possible. You know that the paradigm is not allowed to do work. Who's mixing this into bestiality? It has nothing to do with bestiality. It has to do with doing work. We have a concern that maybe the non-Jew put a bagala when it comes to the egla rufa. It doesn't say just putting a yoke on it. It has to be a little bit more than that. Until it's pulled, it has to be pulled together with the load on it. So, okay, so there's two levels here. But we have a separate concern that's nothing to do with bestiality. And now that has nothing to do with putting animals in their care or buying animals for sacrifices. Who made that up? Yeah, someone was telling me that this guy went to a psychologist and said that he has a dirty mind. He said, maybe the psychologist puts, he said, I don't know why I'm here. Puts a line on a paper. So he said, what is this? This is, this is a man of, so it shows another line. So what is this? He said, this is a picture. So this guy says, I know why you're here. He says, you're the one that's making these pictures. Anyway, we're talking about it has nothing to do with anything. It has to do with putting a yoke on an animal. That's our concern. Anyway, okay. The machlekes Rabbi Elazar And the Rabbanan has to do with we suspect that there's been a yoke put on the paraduma. The Gemara says Leis al Kadaita. No, that's not the problem. Leis al Kadaita. Don't think like that. Mishemnicha porta loy mafsid tuva. He's not going to put a yoke on the on an animal. Why would he do this? Well, he wants to, like, he's carrying a load and he wants to ease up his backpack. He's going to put his backpack on the. He's not going to lose a whole paraduma just for that little bit of care. So it can't be that Rebbe Lezer would say that it's possible that you can't buy it from him because we're afraid he put a load on it. He would never put a load on it. Why? Because it's the paraduma you can make a lot of money for. It says maybe he's not going to commit bestiality. Okay, so it took us back to the machlekes Rebbe Lezer and Rabbanan with bestiality. That's the case. So maybe if he won't commit bestiality with it either, how could Rebbe Lezer say because he's going to lose so much from the sale of the paraduma? It says Hasam Yitzir Taikfa. That's a different story. Yeah, that's a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara can do crazy things. But when it comes to putting his load on the air, he's not going to do. Gemara says, "V'dilma the kuli am alechashin l'revia." Maybe all of this has nothing to do with it. Maybe no one suspects that they're going to commit bestiality. Maybe it's the way Sheila taught. The Tani Sheila. Sheila taught, my time of Rebbe Lezer. What's the reason for Rebbe Lezer? Speak to the Jewish people, last week's parsha, and you should purchase. You should take for yourself. And they say, explain, B'nai Yisrael you purchase it from a Jew. No, you don't purchase it from a non-Jew. You don't take it from a. So look at what's going on here.
As a rule, so it's not
as a rule.
Of their action.
It's nothing to do with that. It's who's supposed to get the paraduma? Where's it supposed to come from? Okay. The Gemara says, Leis al Kadaita. This cannot be the pshat. Because if you look further, because Rebbe Lezer said that you can't buy paraduma from a non-Jew. It says at the end, and Rebbe Lezer would say the same thing about any other animal as well, any other sacrifice. You can't get from a non-Jew. Well, if you're going to accept the pshat that Sheila said in this, Bishlem a para. When it comes to a para, it says kicha. So that's in the pasuk when it comes to the purchasing where it needs to be purchased from. By all sacrifices, does it say kicha? Does it say that it has to be purchased in a certain way? It doesn't even say anything about purchasing by the other sacrifices. So this can't be the pshat in Rabbi Eliezer. So what's the pshat in Rabbi Lezer? Pshat in Rabbi Lezer must be that we're concerned about bestiality. And now Rav Pedas would have a pshat. So what's the difference in our Mishnah between the Mishnah that says you can't put it in their care? That's because Rabbi Lezer holds that. And what would be the opinion that says you're allowed to purchase it for a sacrifice? That's the opinion of the Rabbanan. Gemara says v'dilma ad kan lepliga Rabbanan led Rabbi Lezer. Maybe the Rabbanan don't say that it's allowed. They argue with Rabbi Lezer. Maybe that's only Ella b'para de yakarim. Maybe they only permit it by the paraduma because it's expensive, and the person would never lose such a amount of money just because he has a Yetzer Hara. So, and that's why they permit it. But maybe other sacrifices they would agree. So now that we just flipped our problem. This is like, we kept saying Rabbi Lezer can't hold like this. Now we're saying, okay, right, you got it. Rabbi Lezer holds like that. But now the Rabbanan don't hold that it's mutter. Why would the Rabbanan say? Maybe the Rabbanan would say that it's only mutter by the paraduma to buy from them, but not for other sacrifices. It doesn't answer our question now, because that brisa before that told us you can buy animals from them for sacrifices, it's not true. The Rabbanan don't hold that. They only hold that by paraduma that you can buy from. The Gemara says, well, the problem is we have a brisa that says that you can buy an animal for them for a sacrifice. The Gemara says, Mani, who would that brisa fit with? Lay Rabbi Lezer. It's clearly not Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer says you can't buy a paraduma, and we added in you can't buy any sacrifice from them. It says V'lei Rabbanan, and now according to you, you're telling me it's not the Rabbanan either. Tanya Behedya is also taught clearly in the Brisa. My esivu le chavrui le Rabbi Lezer. What was the response that Rabbi Lezer's friend said back? There's kol tzayin keder yikbetzalach yalu l'ratzon al mizbechi. All the sheep of Kedar, which is a place, will gather for you. They'll be brought as sacrifices on my altar. Well, apparently, you could bring other sacrifices. You could bring sacrifices from the non-Jews. Kedar's Yishmael. And therefore, what we're holding right now is that if Rebbe Lezer holds that the problem is bestiality, the Rabbanan are going to hold that there is no problem of bestiality and it's mutter by all sacrifices. And therefore, Reb Das does give us a good answer. Okay, now this apparently is a new discussion. It says Ad kan le pligi el b'chshasha. We were discussing here if we should be concerned that maybe the non-Jew is going to live with the animal, and therefore that would prohibit it to be a sacrifice. Aval hecha devadei Rava, but if it would be definite that he definitely lived with the animal, pasla, he would invalidate the paraduma. Now the paraduma is like this little a hybrid. It's sort of a sacrifice, but it's not really a sacrifice. It's a whole process. That's how it's
processed.
That it's how it's prepared and all of this, but it was not offered on the altar. So, so now the question is, would it really be prohibited if bestiality would be committed with the paraduma? It would be possible. The parakachim is be'achi. Obviously, it must have the sanctity of a sacrifice. Kachim is be'ach, of the holy things that are brought on the altar. Now, the difference between if it's kachim is be'ach or kachim bedek habayis, does it have the house holiness or does it have the mizbeach holiness? Is the way that it's redeemed. House holiness could be redeemed just you come with money to the gizbar, the person in charge, the treasurer. Say, I want to redeem that. And you take the animal and give the money becomes holy. The animal becomes so mundane.
They found that it was a paraduma while it was already sanctified at the base of Mikdash.
Yeah. So can you come and redeem it? If it's a sacrifice, then it needs to have a mum to redeem it. You can never redeem a sacrifice unless it has a blemish. If it's kachim bedek habayis, then you can redeem it without a blemish. We're proving now that it's kachim mizbeach, and it can only be redeemed if it has a blemish, because of the fact that we said that bestiality would prohibit it.
There's no problem that these animals should have been like.
Which animal?
It's only for Jews.
See from this, would bestiality invalidate the animal? So Gemara says that's not a real proof, because shani parat the chatas karachmana. The paradum is different because in the Torah it's called that it's meinida chatasi. It's called an atonement. Chatas, that word is a word that's also used for a sacrifice. So with that gives us extra halachas, which because of that, even though when it comes to redemption, you don't need a mum to redeem it, but it has certain halachas that make it similar to a karban, which is that if bestiality was performed with it, then it becomes invalid. Okay. So where we're holding right now is that we don't have a proof that it's kachim mizbeach, but it will still have the halachas of bestiality with women. Now, there's different ways of learning this Gemara, but one of the ways would go like this. If you say that it's a chatas, so then if it was born by cesarean, then it shouldn't be a kosher, it can't be used as a karban, and it also can't be used as a paraduma, it should be, because it's called a chatas. Maybe it's takasof. It says Allah matanya, but why was it taught in a brayse? Tisha b'yetzi daifen sula. that if it was sanctified a Yotzi Daifen, that's possible. And Reb Shimon says it's allowed. How could Reb Shimon say it's allowed if it has the status of a chatas? Maybe Reb Shimon would follow his reasoning. This Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So therefore, Reb Shimon has a special opinion about cesareans, that's a regular offspring. Now, the basis of this, what we were talking about here, is a woman that gives birth is tamei for 7 days or 14 days, etc. Let's say the woman didn't give birth naturally; she gave birth with a cesarean. So the Tanakama holds that she does not have that status of the 7 days and 14 days. It was born by operation. Reb Shimon says no; she has the same status: the 7 days, 14 days, 33 days, 66 days. That whole all of that Yemei Tayar. No, it's not a firstborn, right? Daf only that opens the womb, right? It doesn't open the womb. But then there's a difference between a firstborn for redemption and the firstborn for inheritance. So those are two different halachas. Well, maybe the reason why Reb Shimon allows it is because Reb Shimon in other places says that a cesarean is considered a regular birth. But Rabbi Yochanan says about that, where Reb Shimon says a cesarean is a regular birth, Rabbi Yochanan says, but Reb Shimon says that that's only when it comes to a regular birth, when it comes to tumah of the mother that gave birth. But when it comes to kadshim, Reb Shimon would agree that it's not considered you can't use it as a sacrifice. So if it's considered a chatas, so how are you allowed to use it? Okay. Ella shani para. What we're going to say is like this. The para aduma is a little bit different. It says, since we know that it can't have a blemish, or else it becomes invalid. So because of that, we're also going to associate with it, those are other types of blemishes, the other types of laws that are going to invalidate the paraduma. Not that the paraduma is considered a sanctity of the mizbeach, and the way it's redeemed has to be only with a blemish. We're not going to say that. We're going to say really the way it's redeemed could be even without a blemish. It's just like regular kachi bedek abayas, things that belong to the house, to the temple. However, when it comes to the sacrifice, it has another halacha. The ksiv ki mashchasam bam mum bam says that it has corruption in them. There's a blemish in it. Betana de Rabbi Shmuel. Anywhere where it uses the word hashchasa, that root, it's referring to those two items of promiscuous behavior and idolatry. Where do we see that Dvar Erva? It's because it says in the pasuk Yishkas Chol Basar Darkei El Aretz, because the way of all flesh was corrupt on the earth. That was by the flood, right? By the Mabul. And it uses the word hishchas. Avodah Zara, the ksiv, pentashchisim rasisim lachem pesel, lest you'll become corrupt and you'll make for yourselves an idol. Okay. Vaha paranami, and this paraduma hayalumum paisel ba, since if it has a blemish, it becomes pasul. So dvar erva vav, it's coming pasliba. So therefore, these other items, these other possibilities, would also invalidate the animal, even though that doesn't change its status of how it gets redeemed, right? Of its holiness status. Still, it has the holiness status of the temple house, right? But nevertheless, it has the halachas of that bestiality would invalidate it. Okay. Have a little extra time. Let's go further. Gufa, Tani Sheila. Sheila taught, my time of the Rebbe Lezer. What's the reason for Rebbe Lezer? The ksiv, because it says in the pasuk, speak to the Jewish people and take. That only the Jewish people can take, but not a non-Jew, which means you have to purchase the paraduma from a Jew, not from a non-Jew. That's the case. What about v'yachlit shuma? when it came to the building of the tabernacle, the Mishkan. You can only take the materials from a Jew. You can't take it from a non-Jew. And maybe that's true. Maybe you can't take there were stones and the stones for the choshen. Maybe those stones you'd have to get from a gemologist, the Jewish gemologist. You won't be able to get from a non-Jew. However, if that's the case, from Rav Yehuda Mishmol, we have a Talmudic discussion where Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Shalu us Rabbi Eliezer. Sorry?
Is it because it's removing the mitzvah from a Jew?
No, it's because it says in the pasuk. Ad heichen kibbud avein. How far does kibbud avein go? The laws of respect for father and mother. Amalahem. So Rabbi Eliezer responded. This is probably Rabbi Eliezer and Horkinus. Su'uru. Go out and see. How this non-Jewish person behaved towards his father in Ashkelon. Dama ben Nasina Shema, his name is Dama ben Nasina. Kids know the story.
Yeah.
What is it? Where is it? Oh, Ashkelon. Yeah, he's saying Arak, and the Arak battles. It says Ashkelon. It must be the company. Is that the company?
I don't know.
Okay. Dama ben Nasina Shema. Okay. His name was Dama ben Nasina. Pamachas was one time. Bikshmi meno avonim le'ephod. They needed stones, shoam stones for the ephod. Ephod is the apron. And there were stones that went up here on the shoulders. Shishim riboy schar. With money. 10,000. Sounds like 600,000 dinar. Well, yeah, this is like buying a yacht. Rav Kana Masni b'shmeinim riboy. Rav Kana, his version is it's even more than that. It's 800,000 sounds like. Problem is that the key to his chest was under his father's pillow. And he didn't want to wake him up. Okay. Problem here is that you told me that when it comes to taking the gifts for the donations for the Mishkan, you told me that they have to come from a Jew, because it says v'yikhuli dabral b'nei Yisrael v'yikhuli chuma. You have to take it from a Jew. According to this, they're getting the Avnei Shayam from Dama ben Nasina, who wasn't Jewish. Where it says Avnei Shayam hifsek inyan. So when it says in the pasuk, Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'yikhuli chuma, it says a whole list. So in that list, it says Avnei Shayam. Now, by everything in the list, it says the kesef and the cheshes utecheles ve'argaman ba'ires. However, by Avnei Shayam, it doesn't say ve. Right, it sounds like it's a new paragraph. So the Gemara is saying that Avnei Shayam hifsek inyan. It says 1 second, Avnei Maluim ksiv. But it says afterwards Avnei Maluim. Right after Avnei Shayam, Avnei Maluim, the Hadar Arvei that have joined it back together. In other words, it's not a new list. Maybe I could have thought that the donations need to come from a Jew, but the Avnei Shayam was a separate concept. It says no, because right afterwards it says and, which includes it all back the same category. But Ketani Seifa, you have another problem. It says that further on in that discussion with Rabbi Eliezer, it says L'shana Acheres, the following year, Notale Paraduma Bedre. A Paraduma was born in his flock. And Nichnasu Chacham Yisrael Etzlei. The sages came to get the Paraduma. Amalahem Yedei Bachem. He says, I know that I could charge you any amount of money in the world and you would pay it. But I only wanted to get the money that I lost because last year you came, you're going to buy the Shoam stone, but you didn't want to wait around because the key it was locked, and I couldn't get it. So I only want that amount of money that I lost last year. So, obviously, this is a paraduma. This is going directly back on Vayikuli Truma. It says Hasam al Yedei Tagar Yisrael Zavan. Because there was a broker here. So the broker, the Jewish people were going to get it from the non-Jew, and then the broker was going to sell it. The Jewish broker was going to sell it to Beis Hamikdash. Okay.
What? So the people that came to Dama ben Asina were brokers.
Yeah, that's what we're saying now. That they were going
so
to.
Those big chachamim, they were not the.
They weren't buying it directly. One of them would have purchased it off him, and then they would get the money back from the community.
No, if he was a broker, he was going to make money on it.
Yeah, maybe let's leave it over here. Building by Yedei Tagar Yisrael Zavan. Yeah. No, there's a fair amount. Yeah. Then just means son of.
Yeah.
Let me just see. Yeah, this is good. We stopped right here on having failed. You see that? Having failed to the. Okay, have a good day, everyone.